In 1770, an inventor built a mechanical automaton that appeared to play chess using pure clockwork. The machine toured the globe, supposedly defeating Benjamin Franklin and Napoleon Bonaparte entirely on its own. Edgar Allan Poe observed a performance in the United States and immediately deduced the fraud. He argued that complex, unpredictable human behavior could not be matched by a machine. The automaton required a human operator hidden inside to dictate every move. The owners managed to maintain this profitable illusion for nearly a century. Audiences remained fascinated by the magical technology, entirely unaware of the human chess player crammed inside the dark cabinet maneuvering the magnets. 200 years later, the tech industry resurrected this exact illusion. In 2005, Amazon launched an internal service to identify duplicate products, a task their computer programs could not accurately complete. They outsourced the visual identification to human workers clicking through images remotely. Amazon realized the massive commercial potential of this cheap labor pool and released the service as a public platform. They named it Amazon Mechanical Turk. Founder Jeff Bezos described the system as artificial intelligence. A paradox sits at the core of the digital economy. The services presented to us as seamless, hyper-advanced automation rely heavily on manual labor. Algorithms are often hiding a hyper-precarious, globally distributed workforce behind a digital interface. We interact with products like ChatGPT, social media feeds, and autonomous vehicles, and perceive a fully automated output. The software appears to generate text, filter images, and navigate streets effortlessly. Look beneath the user interface. When a machine learning model receives a task it cannot compute, it drops the request to a lower layer. Here, a labor broker system routes cognitive tasks to human piece workers who process the raw data and feed it back up. The scale of this hidden supply chain is immense. Estimates suggest around 20 million people worldwide serve as the ghost workers of artificial intelligence, providing the raw materials necessary to train the models. The companies widely celebrated for pioneering automation are operating highly efficient labor brokerages. They substitute expensive formal employment with a fragmented global supply of cheap labor. This system is known as microwork, or paid crowdsourcing. The foundational unit of this labor model is the HIT, the Human Intelligence Task. Companies take complex data projects and fracture them into isolated microtasks. A worker might spend 1 minute labeling a stop sign or 30 minutes transcribing audio. They are completely stripped of the broader context of the project. The work is defined by microwages. The median pay on Mechanical Turk is roughly $2 per hour. From each transaction, the platform exacts a flat 20% cut. The required skills are also microscaled. Because tasks are completely disconnected, tagging a photo 1 minute, sorting a receipt the next, workers cannot build a coherent professional resume. There is no path to demand higher compensation based on accumulated expertise. The volatility of the platform creates microtime. A worker may spend 12 to 16 hours a day sitting at their screen, but the majority of that time is spent aggressively refreshing the dashboard, just waiting for tasks to appear. Finally, the platforms offer microsecurity. Workers are legally classified as independent contractors, or sometimes even players. They operate entirely outside the bounds of traditional labor protections, receiving no welfare, no healthcare, and zero bargaining power. The ecosystem is split into 2 tiers. Primary platforms like Mechanical Turk and China's Zhubaiji handle massive volumes of basic data sorting. Refined platforms like Sama and Appen handle highly complex, custom datasets for natural language processing and computer vision. Tech executives often frame this dynamic as a flexible side hustle for independent entrepreneurs. The data shows otherwise. For 36% of these workers, microwork is a grueling 7-day-a-week necessity just to survive. To understand exactly how human labor subsidizes algorithms, we can look at OpenAI's process for moderating toxic content. In January 2023, Time magazine revealed that to teach its AI model the difference between safe and harmful text, OpenAI outsourced the labeling of tens of thousands of text fragments to Sama workers in Kenya. The material detailed severe abuse, murder, and torture. The tech executives commanding these platforms earn millions of dollars per hour. The African workers absorbing the psychological trauma of filtering the internet's darkest quarters earned less than $2 an hour. We see this same reliance on human input in the development of autonomous driving. Cameras capture environmental footage, and algorithms identify pedestrians and roadblocks. But the raw training data required for that recognition requires manual labeling. Following the economic collapse of Venezuela and extreme hyperinflation, the middle class turned to digital piecework to survive. By 2018, 75% of global autonomous driving data was being manually labeled by Venezuelans. During the 2012 U.S. election, Mitt Romney made a debate comment about cutting funding to the television station that airs Big Bird. The character immediately became a trending keyword on Twitter. Twitter utilized a real-time human computing engine to categorize the spike. The algorithm couldn't distinguish between political sarcasm and a children's television show, so it automatically bundled the tweets, sent them via API to Mechanical Turk, and paid humans to manually tag the emotional context. The algorithm acts as an automated middleman. Detecting cognitive friction it cannot resolve, it instantly routes the task to the cheapest available human. The World Bank often frames microwork as a digital lifeline for developing nations. However, many researchers argue these workers actually represent surplus humanity, populations that have been structurally excluded from formal employment as the global economy shifts. This global workforce is the result of a significant shift in labor demand. Since the 1980s, the global labor supply has grown significantly, but the capacity of formal industries to absorb these workers has slowed due to three specific factors. First, digital automation. In many manufacturing hubs, robotic systems have increased output, while the headcount required for production has plummeted. Efficiency gains shrink the demand for factory labor, without creating enough new positions to reabsorb the displaced workers. Second, global industrial transfer. Globalization moved labor-intensive manufacturing to regions with cheaper labor, hollowing out the industrial base of the global north. But as automation followed these jobs, it prevented those regions from ever reaching full employment levels. Third, service sector stagnation. Displaced technical workers find the service industry less receptive to technological upgrades and skill mapping. This leaves large groups of people overqualified for service work, but ineligible for the dwindling supply of formal tech jobs. The result is a condition called incomplete employment. This long-term surplus labor force is physically visible in refugee camps in Kenya, in prisons where inmates train algorithms for startups, and in the sprawling urban slums of Kolkata. These marginalized physical spaces are the true engine rooms of the digital economy. Microwork functions as a stopgap for an economic system that no longer requires mass human labor for production, yet has no mechanism to support those excluded from it. Managing millions of distributed workers requires strict oversight. Platforms use the algorithm as a punitive boss to enforce opaque compliance standards. If a worker's data tag differs from the invisible consensus, their quality score drops immediately. There is no human HR department to appeal to. The consequences of a lowered score are severe. Platforms will cancel accounts without warning, confiscate withheld wages, or refuse to pay in cash entirely. Tech giants utilize API supplier systems to intentionally distance themselves from these harsh conditions. By outsourcing to platforms like Sama, large companies can market their businesses as purely algorithmic, while obscuring the massive human workforce managing the data. The work itself can carry literal existential risks. The author categorizes some tasks as grave-digging work. Workers in Middle Eastern refugee camps are paid to label satellite imagery, identifying civilian buildings and pedestrian routes. That precisely marked data is frequently sold directly to defense contractors to guide military drones monitoring their very own regions. In economic terms, grave-digging work means workers are manually training the exact machine learning models intended to replace them. Every tag and transcription increases the precision of the software until the human task is eventually eliminated by the very models they helped build. This daily struggle for survival actively contributes to the worker's own long-term displacement. If platform monopolies continue to expand without regulation, the future looks remarkably like the cyberpunk genre, high technology overlaid onto extreme poverty, where algorithms dictate survival for a marginalized population. But an alternative exists. Karl Marx theorized a future where advanced production systems would allow individuals to engage in diversified, autonomous labor. A person could hunt in the morning, fish in the afternoon, and criticize after dinner, without ever being locked into a single profession. Teaching an AI to recognize characters today and mapping a road tomorrow technically mirrors that exact diversified flexibility, but it only functions as a utopia if a massive economic shift occurs. This chart shows the concept of universal basic services. As manufacturing, logistics, and agriculture replace human workers with automated systems, the supply cost of medical care, housing, and food plummets toward zero. As the scale of automation expands, society must expand the provision of these basic services, offering them universally. Survival must be decoupled from the necessity of earning a wage. If the material needs of the worker are guaranteed outside of the platform, the dynamics of microwork reverse. It transitions from desperate, exploitative labor into actual, freely chosen personal growth. Despite their geographic isolation and lack of formal employment status, microworkers are not passive victims. Global resistance movements are actively forming. Workers are utilizing physical worker centers to connect and organize. They are writing custom browser plugins that allow them to review and evaluate task publishers, effectively reversing the platform's one-way surveillance. They share data on hidden corporate clients in private forums to expose the supply chain. Through collective letter campaigns, they coordinate massive pressure on tech companies, demanding transparency and fair compensation. Their core demand strips away the corporate smokescreen entirely. I am a human, not an algorithm. The historian E.P. Thompson warned that the ideal world will not rise automatically like the sun. It must be deliberately built by the people living in it. As we implement artificial intelligence across the global economy, we have to look behind the doors of the 21st century mechanical Turk. If we want the benefits of automation, we must refuse to optimize our systems at the expense of the human lives grinding away inside the gears.